Hello and welcome to episode 48 of the Boot Nerds podcast. Jay, what's going on?
Hi guys, how are you doing? Josh, my man, hope you're well.
I'm doing great. Now, you know what? It just came to me now. I just wanted to point out my appreciation for the names that you give me in each of the episodes. For those of you that only listen to the audio version of the podcast, go on YouTube and just click on the video just to see what my name is, because it's a different one in every single one. I have no say in it. It's always Jay's doing, and it never disappoints.
Look, if you knew the amount of time I spend on, looking for names, sorting them out, deciding, should I go with this one? What's the vibe of the video? It's actually ridiculous. And I think my girlfriend, if she knew, she would be a little bit concerned.
I'm imagining her going through your internet search history.
Yeah.
And just all these weird J names popping up.
Yeah.
But if you guys have any, this is it's become a joke on my channel. It's obviously transitioned into the Boot Nerds podcast as well. Some of the funniest comments I've ever seen on the internet have come from people making up names. So if you have any really good suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'm sure Jay would appreciate that.
Oh, I will be a happy taker, guys. So give me whatever. Give me your best shot, and it's okay if they're a little mean. He can take it. I used Jungfrau, which means virgin in German. So I mean, we're into that territory. The sillier, the better. So much appreciated. Also, of course, don't forget that if you have any questions in general, you should just leave them in the comment section right down below. And if you like the podcast and this video in general, also, slap a like on it. Hit it with a little bit of a thumbs up. If you don't like it, you can go thumbs down, but give it a thumbs up. We'd be so happy. So yeah. And today, we are going to return the favor for all those thumbs ups and questions in the comment section. We're going to talk about the brand of the year. Simple as that. It's very easy.
Yeah, and I think there's so much to go off on this topic, given that every brand has been pretty active this year, to where almost every model in every brand has been replaced in 2019, which is a crazy turnover that we've never seen before.
And let's just be honest, a lot of the brands have been killing it. I mean, I was just going through this in my head before, and I was thinking, okay, there are at least 4 brands that I could call the brand of the year with peace in my mind, and I could defend. Yeah, so it's gonna be an interesting discussion. Before we get into it, though, I'd really like to hear what you guys think is the brand of the year and why. So if you are on YouTube, you should let us know in the comment section right down below as well. The comments are going to be active today, hopefully.
I'm excited. To see it.
So where should we begin alphabetically? Big 2, Adidas, Nike.
Yeah, let's start with them. So we'll start with Adi.
Okay.
Let's start with the positive and then maybe move our way to the negative. What would you say is the major number one highlight of the Adi brand in 2019?
I think it's the fact that they maintain quality while trying new things. And by trying new things, I like how they constantly stay true to sort of their formula these days. So they have the laceless boots. They have their more or less their setup right now. But I also like how they try to constantly change their lineup with little things. So change the materials and all that stuff. I don't know if I want to say that they're playing it safe, because they're not really, but still they're sticking to what they know works, and then they make these little tweaks and they try to make the products better by not changing everything, and I like that. I think it's been a successful year for Adidas, and of course the remakes, the re-releases, giving us, proper OG vibes throughout the year. Some of the products have actually been better than the inline products. We'll get to that. But that's what I've really appreciated Adidas for in 19. What do you say
out of their current lineup? In no particular order, because I don't want to put that pressure on you.
Okay.
I don't want to put that pressure on myself either. In no particular order, what would you say? Yeah, what do you think are their top 3 boots right now of the inline products, not any limited edition stuff?
Of the inline products, I would probably have to point to the Copa 20 Plus, of course, X 19.1 and Nemesis 19.1.
Okay, I had the exact same three in mind.
I knew. Right? I think they're far and above every other Adidas product out there right now. If you're looking for the things that we are, so we're looking for like a relatively a snug, comfortable fit. We're looking for good responsiveness and a not too thick and chunky touch on the ball. And I think that is what we get in those boots.
And look, at my criticism, if we've been very positive up until this point. If I had to have like a strong criticism of the Adi brand right now, I think those three boots are very, very strong options in comparison to what they offer versus everything on the market. But I feel like aside from those three, everything else that they offer is arguably just average and or too similar to each other and or just kind of a little bit gimmicky. Because I'm sorry, I think that the Nemesis 19 Plus was a very bold idea and it's a cool concept. Like I was very intrigued. It's one of those boots that if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, and I'm sure you'd probably be in the same boat, I would probably buy a pair just based on curiosity because it's so weird and so interesting. But I think once you actually get the chance to try it out, and if you've had experience with other laceless products or other high-end boots in general, I think there's reason to be disappointed with much of that boot. And it does strike me as being a little bit gimmicky.
And especially because, the 19.1 gives you more or less everything you get in the 19 Plus. Of course, it's lower, but you get more or less the same sensation from the material, but you just get that added lockdown from laces. So for me, there's no, I can't justify to myself to buy the 19 Plus because you get all of that plus more in the 19.1. And that for me is maybe also what I would call my criticism, turning into Danish here, criticism of Adidas. I would say it's also one of their positives is that they are maybe playing it a little bit too safe and too similar, both in terms of their 19 Plus and 19.1 products that at times feel like it's just the same base, and then they say, okay, this is the 19 Plus. How are we going to get laces on the 19.1 and make it work and be a little bit different? And also, I don't exactly know, if we look back to last year, how much of the product actually evolved, if you know what I mean. The X is more or less the same. The Nemesis is more or less the same. Pred, the same. Copa, also more or less the same. Well, exactly the same, just with a bit of laser edge texturing on top. I mean, okay, the Nemesis has changed significantly, especially on the Plus, but has it really? I
mean, you know what? I think my view of Adi, especially over 2019, is they don't seem to want to commit to even their own concepts. I think what's so great about the Copa 20 Plus and Copa 19 Plus is that's a football boot that was legitimately designed to be laceless from day one, and it shows in how that product fits, feels, looks. It's I think the best laceless football boot ever made.
Oh,
right.
Absolutely,
and you got that sense with the A16 Plus Pure Control. This was like purpose built to be laceless from day one. And I feel like every single line from the Adi brand was either designed to be laceless or not laceless, which means that the alternate variant ultimately ends up suffering a little bit, right? Where, I don't want to say that they're forcing, like you look at the X line, the X19.1, as much as I like the upper on the X19 Plus, it's almost a boot that seems like it was forced to be laceless rather than kind of designed like that in the first place, right?
Like, it's a speed boot. Why would you make a speed boot laceless? A speed boot should be responsive. And, when it comes down to it, laceless boots are just less responsive, at least in my book. I just, I don't mind the 19 Plus from the X line. I just don't necessarily think it's... It feels like an afterthought thinking, oh, we could also make this laceless. That would be nice. Then we have laceless boots across all four silos, but it just doesn't feel like it does the direction of the boot, the purpose of the boot. It doesn't do it any favors. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think people are starting to catch on that it's like that it is on some boots a little bit of a gimmick. Because I think if you look at the Predator 19.1 and the Predator 19 Plus, while there are physical differences to the upper to make the 19 plus laceless, the average person has no clue that that's even a thing. And you kind of just look at the two and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm paying $50 extra for them to take away the laces and not punch any holes in the upper. Like, they have so many cool technologies and ideas within the brand, but it feels like they're really forcing the laceless thing on certain models rather than just making the best boot possible. And if that means that the boot has laces or doesn't have laces, I'm fine with that. I think that when it's executed as a laceless boot from day one, they can end up with a really good product. But the laceless thing has kind of turned into, on certain models, somewhat of an afterthought. And they're not trying to make the best product first. They're trying to make this wow factor product that ultimately isn't as good as it perhaps could have been.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's actually, for a lack of trying. I think they're thinking a lot about it, but maybe it's just they've kind of dug themselves into a hole, and now everything kind of has to be laceless, as well as making what would probably be the best suited product for a specific category. And of course, who am I to say? I'm just a guy. This is just my opinion. But maybe they should just scrap the whole plus and 0.1 thing and just make one like top tier boot, be it laceless or be it with laces. I mean, Nemesis and X should, in my opinion, have laces for the high end product, and the Copa and the Predator shouldn't. I mean, that would work really well, in my opinion. Then you also have the whole diversification that would justify, okay, this is actually purpose-built, like you say. So that could be a suggestion. But I think overall, they make very high-quality boots. You have at least 3 options that are, very high quality. The 0.1s are decent value for money, I would say. And you don't really go wrong with the Adi boots.
No, there's nothing that they currently make that I would say is bad, which is good.
Sound logic, and we got to give them props for the X99.1, which is a fantastic boot.
Yeah, I think out of all the brands, their remakes and limited edition releases this year, not just colorway stuff, but actual boot variants have probably been the strongest of all the brands.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? They've done a good job with that.
No two words about it.
Overall, I think a much stronger year this year versus probably the last couple from the Adi brand, if I'm being honest.
In terms of new releases, I wouldn't say so. I don't feel that way, but in terms of overall product lineup, yeah, this is probably the strongest they've been in many, many years. Because it kind of feels like the culmination of all the stuff they've been building up to. Like we're close to having what really is a very, not the perfect lineup, but something where everyone can look at it from a holistic point of view and say, okay, this is the best we can give in these categories.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Right.
Which brings us to their main competitor.
Across the pond.
Nike.
And it's been a pretty busy year for Nike. I think it's fair to say they've updated. They've given us the Phantom Venom. We've seen the materials updated, and we've also had a new Jumbo Legend. So 4 boots in the space of 12 months. That is being busy. And if we start with the good stuff again for Nike, what do you have?
I mean, I think the highest of highs in 2019 has to be the new Mercurial, right? It was very interesting to get a refresh or a new model, new generation of Mercurial so soon, because they've really stuck to that 2-year cycle for pretty much the entire run of the Mercurial series, right? So to get one it was like a little less than a year and a half after the Vapor 12 and Superfly 6. And at a quick glance, the boot looked very similar. I think the graphics package people really liked more than what they were doing before. But the boot as a whole feels, for the most part, completely different.
Yeah.
And from a technical standpoint, I don't think that there's ever been a sock boot, if we want to call it that's been that advanced and performs that well and fits the way that it does. It's a really impressive technical achievement, and I think it's the pinnacle of the Mercurial series so far. We hope that every new model gets progressively better and better, and I feel like they actually achieved that with this one.
And I think you know, the Mercurial launch for me was a bit weird, and I think it's taken me actually 6 months to fully appreciate what it was, because back then, you know, at least I had the feeling, don't know about you, but I had the feeling that, okay, this is a facelift. Nike are just doing facelifts better than Adidas, really. That the Vapor 13 was just like, oh, let's just slightly amend the upper, you know, throw in some high tenacity ons, and that's cool. But for me, this actually feels like a fully fledged update. This is a new generation. Of course, it builds on the last generation, but the fit and feel, and especially the performance, has changed so significantly that I don't see this as just an update, and next year we're supposed to get like the next big thing, because we got that this year, if you know what I mean. And then on the other hand, you know, I forgot what I was saying because my first point was important, but yeah, it's a fantastic boot. So
yeah, it's such a defining model for their brand. I do the same thing. You have this brilliant thing that you want to say, and there's like this build up to it, but by the time you finish the build up, you forgot the original point. Do you get it?
Yeah, I got it. Because you said that he was arguably the best sock construction ever, and I would tend to agree with you. We should also give props to the Predator 18 Plus for that, because it actually did a good job holding the foot in place just with knit. But I think you know, what makes this so brilliant with the Mercurial is that it's simple but super advanced. So if you look at it from a technical point of view, it's really advanced because it uses very simple technologies. Like, it's simple to understand. And it's just getting to the point where you don't overcomplicate things, but still make it modern and advanced enough so it works without no fuss. That, for me, is the big achievement. And what I'm impressed about is that on the 12th, you know, some people, myself included, said that I'd rather have the 11. I don't say that anymore, and I haven't heard anyone really wanting to go back to their 11s because of the 13.
Yeah, I think what's so important for every brand is you have something that is like this defining characteristic. And I think for Adi right now, it's the Copa 19 plus 20 plus. Nothing else out there feels like that boot. And right now, the Mercurial series, you put a Superfly or a Vapor on your foot, nothing else that you can buy is going to feel and perform that way. And I guess that's kind of what the Mercurial series has always stood for. But again, looking back at the previous generation, the Vapor 12 and the Superfly 6, while it had a lot of great performance qualities about it, I don't think that it separated itself enough from other knitted boots out there. And that's why I think it was like maybe lacked the popularity that some past Mercurial boots have had, right? Because you look at most Vapors and most Superflies, there was some kind of a very distinctive defining characteristic about it that you couldn't get from anything else. And we have that again in the Mercurial series as a sock boot, which has been very difficult to do given that everyone's making sock boots now, and they do end up feeling similar. The Vapor stands alone though.
The funny thing is that I never really felt like this year's Mercurial was like a big Mercurial launch for Nike. You know, previously we've seen a lot of focus, like big campaigns, a lot of noise generated around the Mercurials. We saw it last year. And it just feels like this was, you know, also in the eyes of, well, everyone out there, myself included, this was the upgrade, but it just turned out to be so much more. And so maybe, you know, maybe they could have made an even bigger bang and buzz around it when it came out. It was just a thought. But yeah. Of course, so the Mercurials, that was a really big high point for Nike. I also appreciated the launch of the Phantom Venom. I think it's a very good boot, really solid performer, nothing really to be mad about there. If we flip it around, Legend 8.
New Tiempo. Look, Tiempo Legend 7 came out, and I think that was like the new standard for performance characteristics in a kangaroo leather football boot. But over its 2-year span, I think all the other brands kind of caught up.
Yeah.
And they offered something at least similar in terms of performance and arguably better in terms of feel.
Yeah.
So Legend 8 had some high hopes to live up to. And while I think the boot looks pretty good, I just think that and it still performs good. I think it arguably performs better than Legend 7 and arguably is more comfortable as well.
Oh, definitely.
But is certainly not, I don't want to say worse, but it's certainly not better in terms of touch when compared to the Legend 7. And I don't think it's as pure feeling for a leather football boot as a lot of other options out there. And I'm thinking Copa 20 Plus. I'm thinking even Puma King Platinum. I just think that the leather's not, as we've talked about on this podcast, I don't know how many times now, the leather doesn't seem like it's the star of the show anymore. And it needs to be.
And this is my thing. That for Nike has been like a bit of a negative thing because the Legend, to me at least, has lost its identity. It's a fantastic football boot, no two words about it, but it just doesn't feel like the Legend anymore. And that for me is a bit of a, the problem for Nike this year is that they have the Mercurial as the super strong performer. But I also feel that Nike have put all their eggs in that basket because it is so iconic. It really is full of the Nike DNA. Phantom Venom is a decent performer. It's just doing its own thing. Legend, a little bit off. And the Phantom Vision, we all know how I feel about that. It's not a bad football boot, but it needs to be updated soon. So for me, it's just Nike are in a strong position because of the Mercurial. But even the Mercurial, they potentially should do something about it. We've talked about it many times, but do something about the difference between the Vapor and the Superfly.
Yeah, it's very...
And they could have done
it's
more
unnecessary
in 19, I feel. So for me, Nike is still very, very strong on the market, but I would say the gap that we've seen over some years or during some years to Adi and the other competitors, I wouldn't say it's as big as it has been because it's really Mercurial carrying the whole Nike train at the moment for me.
Yeah, but I will say, personal preferences aside, because again, everyone likes something a little bit different. I think across the board of their top end models, I think it's probably the strongest lineup.
Yeah.
Like I would rather, like if every time I played, I had to rotate in one top end Nike boot, I would rather go through the Nike lineup than the entirety of the Adidas lineup. I think that if we're talking about a performance standard, the line across the board is far more straight with Nike, where Adidas, it's kind of very up and down. So I'll give them props for that. And I do think some of the limited edition stuff they've done this year has been good. I thought T90 Laser 1 remake was super cool.
Oh, we know, bro.
Very true to the original. Was that this year or was that last year?
Which one?
The Laser 1 remake.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. I'm sorry. Was that 18 or 19?
No, that was 19.
It was 19, right?
Yeah,
okay, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure.
Anyway, yeah. So Nike is still going strong, but it's yeah.
But you know what? I think I don't want to come across as we really talk negatively about Adidas for a long time. I think that Nike is kind of at the moment starting to suffer from the same thing that Adi has been over the last couple of years, is where they have these couple of really good technologies and they feel this need and pressure to incorporate it on all of their boots. And while the boots all perform great, I would like to see more variety. I just don't think I think what people want from a Tiempo is not necessarily they don't need this tech spec list that you need to fill up an entire book to read everything. It should be a little bit more simple, innovate in small ways, but ultimately the purity of that boot is kind of what has made the Tiempo series, and it's kind of lost that with this latest generation. And I don't know, I feel like there's this pressure to overcomplicate things within the Nike brand.
And also, I think that if we compare Nike and Adidas, I think Adidas have made a big change, have completely changed their boot game more recently than Nike have, instead of just updating and doing something familiar and similar and, taking cues from back then and bringing into the mix to make boots better. Because, Phantom Vision, that was basically a Magista. Phantom Venom continued the Hyper Venom trend by bringing in some T90 laser elements. Mercurial Vapor's just gotten better and better. And Tiempo, well, we all know that story where, so we need something from Nike. And maybe it's just going a little too well for them. And maybe they're becoming a little, I don't know, I don't want to say complacent, but that's a risk at least. So I hope for them that 2020 brings in some like proper big time innovation where they turn something on its head.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see what happens. Strong year nonetheless.
Yep.
But definitely could have been better.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to Puma.
Puma. It's also been a very, no, not Puma.
Not Puma?
No.
This is going to be that one guy in the comments.
This is something you need to promise me for 2020, that you need to pronounce the European brand names the right way. So Adidas and Puma.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to my local shoe store and just say Adidas, and they're gonna give me this weird look every time I say it. It's gonna be great.
I know. We're gonna transform the SR4U channel into saying Adidas and Puma. We're gonna work on that in 2020. Anyway, Puma have had for me, a slightly confusing but really, really good year. And I think the Puma brand is as strong as it ever has been, if not the strongest it's ever been. Lineup-wise, they have a little bit of everything. They have a boot that is completely 100% theirs in the future. The one, like we've talked about, probably needs a change, and that is, for me, the biggest weakness right now of the Puma brand. But they have the King Platinum. I mean, just a solid performer. Future is an amazing football boot, a little too wide for my taste, but there's no denying that, objectively speaking, it's right up there among the best boots on the market. As I see things, at least. Tell me if you disagree, but so they have some very well-performing boots. They offer people something unique, and they cost €200, and that for me is really hard to argue against.
Yeah, across the board, current lineup, very strong. I think they have something very unique and simple, which is very refreshing to see in the Puma King Platinum. Like, is it the best performing boot in terms of like responsiveness? No, but it doesn't need to be. And the price reflects the amount of tech that has been introduced in that boot. The future, I mean, it's pretty unheard of to have 3 generations of one line in 1 year, but Puma did it with the future line. And it started disappointing. I think that where they're at now is a pretty solid space. Although I do feel like with every new generation of future, the main concept of that boot, that NetFit system, is becoming less and less relevant to the final product, which is a little bit disappointing. Like, I don't know about you, how you feel about it, but honestly, I think the NetFit system on the current future, it might as well not be there. It's the options are that few.
I don't
get this sense.
I know what you mean.
Like with the first future, you got the sense of like, oh my gosh, there are unlimited possibilities for me to lace. If I want to lace it different every single time I play, I could do that. With this new future, I feel like there's like 5 viable ways to lace it up.
It's like they've taken the stuff that they've seen, the different ways of lacing they've seen people go with, and then said, okay, right, that's everything we need. So we just need to make sure that these holes are actually there. And then the rest, well, people don't do it anyway. So yeah, you're definitely right. I would still say it's relevant, at least for me. I'm just speaking from my personal opinion here. But I think you're right. And who knows, it might just be enough. Maybe the whole, the endless options thing was too much for the non-nerds out there. Maybe it needs to be simple, and you need to have 3 options that you can go with instead of 5,000. So we might also be, I'm just saying, we might be in the wrong here, and to the average consumer who just wants a nice fitting football boot, it might actually be a more easily approachable boot, if you know what I mean.
Sure. No, you're not wrong in saying that. Either way, I think where they're at now with the 5.1, it's a strong product.
I agree.
And legitimately, I find that boot so comfortable.
It has to be one of the most comfortable boots of the year. That and the Rebula, we're going to get to that in a little bit. But that is, it's the most comfortable boot alongside the Rebula in a long time, because it's mind-blowing. And for that alone, I think the future really makes Puma what they are today. The one has kind of gone into, I'm not mad at it. I don't hate it, but it could be more.
We talked about it in a previous episode, right? It's a really good boot, but maybe a confused concept that's trying to do too many things at once. People don't quite understand it, maybe don't quite like the way that it looks. Again, solid boot, but probably time for something new. Either way, I think Puma had a pretty strong year. Like, I can't say anything terrible about any of their top end models right now. And they're pretty much all less expensive than what you can buy from Nike and Adi, but arguably just as good.
And it seems like the vibe is changing around Puma. You know, a couple of years ago, people didn't really, you know, at least that's what I heard, that, oh, that's Puma, okay. But right now, people are actually, you know, really starting to talk about Puma as you know, the desirable brand again. And that's because they've had a succession of years with very good products. And I think this year, bar the first 2 generations of the Future this year, maybe, they could have been better, but they turned it around and they end the year on a high note for me. So more positives than negatives.
Yeah. So strong year for them, which brings us to what I think is really the only other brand that is a true contender for brand of the year. And that is our Japanese friends, Mizuno.
Mizuno, yeah.
They, unlike almost every other year when we pretty much get nothing new, like maybe like 3 colorways through the whole year, this year they went pretty wild.
It went bonanza, really. I mean, they gave us new Rebula. They gave us 2 limited editions of the Neo 2 betas. Last year, of course, was a strong year, and it's going to be hard to follow up on because of the Wave Cup Legends. If you have been watching Unisport and the Boot Nerds podcast and SR4U, you'll probably know that both Josh and I, we kind of like the boots. But I actually think they managed to gone and done even better this year because of the Rebula. And because of the betas. So those 2 boots have really elevated what were already Rebula 2. It wasn't the best boot ever, but it was a solid product. But they've actually, for me, challenged, especially Nike, but also Adidas on the Copa 20 Plus. They've really challenged for the throne of the best modern leather boot. And I would argue that they might have come out victorious. And that is something truly amazing. And they've also, you know, somehow managed to get even more popular. Then, of course, they've given the nerds, the speed connoisseurs, the Neo 2 betas, which are simply just amazing football boots. They've kept up the high level of engineering and build quality. But on the other hand, they're expensive football boots.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, yes, we've had the Rebula, we've had the Neo 2 betas, and that's nice. But the Morelia is still the same. The Neo 2 is still the same. That could use an update. And maybe they just still lack that cutting edge in terms of being willing to compromise a little bit on their whole, you know, DNA. It's all about leather. It's all about keeping these round studs, 4 studs on each side. You know, maybe they should just try and get a little bit out of their safe shell and be a little bit more brave to take on, in terms of technology and innovation, the behemoths out there, Nike and Adidas, because Lord knows they have the technology, they have the money. It's like, go at it.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, go on.
You're right. I would really like to see Mizuno just go crazy on boot. And I don't necessarily want them to replace any of their 3 silos. Maybe even like a limited edition Flyknit Ultra or X99.1 type release, right? Where it's like, here's this crazy thing, and if the reception is good, then hey, maybe there's opportunity to do more of that in the future, right? But I think what I like about the Mizuno brand is not just the build quality, which I think is better than any other football boot brand out there right now. Yeah, the boots are expensive, but they're so distinctive from one boot to the next. Like Morelia, I know it's an old school boot, but what really feels like a classic Morelia? It's just such a good product. It's so well-rounded. You can't really, I know you can compare it to a Copa Mundial, but if you had one on both feet, I know people love the Copa, but I'd have a hard time picking a Copa over a made in Japan Morelia.
It's not a contest really for me.
Right? It's not close. I think what they did to the Rebula is more or less the direction Nike should have gone into with the Tiempo Legend 8. It's a lot of that Legend 7 concept to a certain extent, but just better. Just better. And then the Neo 2 Beta is just one of those boots where I can't compare it to anything else. It has this like weightless sensation when you wear it. It's just, they've done a very good job. They know what their customers want. They're not trying to push anything gimmicky on anybody. And look, the product just ends up being solid. The only downside is that it is very expensive.
And yeah, I think Mizuno have definitely only improved over the year, and they've just gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. It started last year, really, maybe 17, but you know, they're continuously building on top of their successes, and they're just going from you know, being stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think they just need to take a little bit more risks in 2020 to really become like a serious challenger for to Adidas, Puma, and Nike. And we're not going to get there in 2020. We're not going to get even close with Mizuno, but it would just be nice to see a fourth brand really pushing for it. So I think, and the fact that they have this 30-day satisfaction guarantee where you can buy the product, you can wear it for 30 days, and then if you don't like it, you can send it back and your money back. No questions asked. I mean, they believe that much in their products, and that just shows that, hey, they're onto something and they know it. So maybe just, you know, a little bit more risk, and that'd
cool.
be nice.
So is there like a significant negative to talk about with Mizuno this year?
I think it's that they're playing it a little too safe with some of their stuff. Maybe they're a little, you know, they innovate in a lot of areas, but maybe it would be great to just like take some of their designers and engineers and just say, you can't do anything you've done before.
Yeah.
You just throw out the rule
like
book
that.
and we force you to do something you've never done before, just to see what they could come up with. I don't know if it'll work, or if they're just like the best at doing this one thing. That might also be the case, but that would be exciting to see for me.
Yeah, they're a company that seems to be which again, there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with taking a really good concept and then building on that with each new model. But you're right, it would be really nice to see something completely new, just to see what it would be like. Because I'm confident, as I'm sure you are, that Mizuno's fully capable of doing something really special. I guess 2020, we'll see if that happens. I mean, I was also, I guess, a little bit, I know Beta is kind of like a brand new boot, but I would have really liked to see a Neo 3.
Yeah. Yeah, that should have
been cool.
Yeah, and they probably would have needed that for it to have been a perfect year for them. Because, you know, a lot has happened, but maybe, you know, compared to Nike, Adidas, and Puma, more should have happened. And you know, but that's the deal with being a smaller brand. You can't do as many releases because you can't sell as much product, and that's their curse, I guess.
Cool.
Speaking of another small brand, just before we end it off, I think we could talk about all the really small brands. But New Balance, how's their year been?
Liverpool wins the Champions League. Sadio Mane wearing their boots, winning the Champions League, and arguably being the best player. I mean, that's a super high for the brand.
Tequila 2, and much better than the first one.
Tequila 2, improved in some ways. A solid boot. I think the Furon V5 is probably their best speed boot to date, but still not incredible. But then they lose the Liverpool kit.
I was just going to say, Liverpool won the Champions League. Oh, they won the best player of the tournament that wore their boots, and then they went on and lost everything. So that's...
Look... That aside, I think New Balance had about as good of a year as you could have expected from them. Huge. There's a ton of room to improve. I don't want to say that. I don't think that they're a realistic contender for brand of the year, but by far in the football boot industry, since I don't know if this is their return. I think they were in the industry at one point or another, but since they've been relevant for the last 3 or 4 years, this has been by far their most successful year. And I'm curious what 2020 is going to bring.
I think New Balance are going to come into 2020 with, on the boot front, all guns blazing. I think that is, next year we can look back at that and say, okay, this has been their strongest year. They have to update the Furon. I mean, that's the thing. Positives, new Tequila from a boot lineup perspective, best speed boot they've had so far. Negatives, their speed boot should be better. And they should have more players in it. They have to fix this. And I can't see that they won't. And the Tequila, I think it's only going to get better. So I would agree with you. It's not in the running of brand of the year, but they've had on their from a New Balance point of view, this is the best they've ever been in modern times.
Yeah, I still get this sense with them, and I'm not like big on New Balance running shoes or sneakers, but I'll walk into the New Balance store when I'm around one, and I'm always so impressed by the running shoes and the tech and like these materials that they have on their running line. And I'm like, what? Why is none of this on the football boots? Like, it's similar to Mizuno in that they have so much of this technology, but it's like the design team is being held back or something. I don't know what's going on.
Sorry, I could just see you walking into like casually walking into the New Balance.
Want to hear a funny story, Jay? I walked into a New Balance outlet store here, local to me, and I think I was wearing Jordan 11s, right?
Yeah.
Everyone knows what those are.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's like one of the most iconic sneakers of all time. So I walk in wearing these Jordan 11s, and the guy working there, he's like, "Oh, those are really nice shoes. What are those?" They like, he thought there was like something new. And I'm like, "Buddy, where have you been?"
Dude.
Yeah, it was really weird. I was like, very strange question, bud. But yeah, huge potential for New Balance. They just haven't, they've gotten nowhere near what I think the potential of this company is.
Agreed. So in that regard, yes, they've had a strong year and the strongest yet, but it's not been as strong as it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but
which leads us into, I guess, the answer.
The brand of the year.
What was the brand of the year?
Yeah, which brand has improved the most and put out the best products in 2019? For me, there are two real contenders. I'm gonna let you go first.
Okay, but you can only pick one.
Yeah, of course.
And look, I really like what Adidas did with the remakes and the limited edition releases this year. I think they did some cool and weird stuff. Like, we didn't even mention F50.6 remake. That's not a very good boot, but I love that they made that. I like seeing brands do things that make no sense.
Why not?
But I can't say that that's like a justification for giving a brand boot of the year. And then Nike, while I feel they did something so good with the Mercurial, I was also so disappointed with Tiempo. And I mean, Phantom Venom was good, but I don't think that it was as aggressive as it perhaps should have been looking back now. Puma, they were too up and down for me, because I think it wasn't until like 3 weeks ago that we were both pretty down on the Future line, as good as that concept is. So for me, I think it's Mizuno. I think Mizuno had a super strong year. I think their boots across the board right now. Look, they took the Morelia Neo 2 that I was not personally a big fan of, and they introduced the Beta, and I love the Beta. It's totally not the type of boot that I would ever pick to wear, but I'm happy to wear it because I just love how it feels. And the Rebula 3 is like, I love the Legend 7, then all this other stuff started coming out, and the Rebula is like the evolution of that Legend 7 that I was looking for. I really like that boot as well. And then the Classic Morelia, they didn't need to change it. They probably shouldn't change it. I think across the board, they have the strongest lineup in 2019.
I didn't expect that. I didn't expect you to say that. I was also, Mizuno was gonna be my other brand. I'm a little bit confused right now because you make a very good point. What I don't want to do here is I just don't want to be the guy who names the small brand, the underdog, the brand of the year, just because you expect less of them, and then they go and make this brilliant lineup, and all of a sudden, they're just it's the second coming of Christ.
Yeah.
I do feel that from I love what Mizuno have done, and I love the brand and the company, the people in it to bits. But I think that, what Nike have done with the Mercurial is simply too significant for me to ignore. So I think because of that, I would probably name Nike brand of the year because of the Mercurial line, and mostly because of that, with Mizuno coming in as a very, very, very close second, because you can't ignore what the new Mercurial has done, and it's everywhere. It's you see players, defenders, midfielders, wide feet, slim feet, it's everywhere. And I feel I want to acknowledge that, although it hurts my feelings to not give it to Mizuno, because God knows they deserve it. Yeah,
and I can only say Mizuno this year. I don't think there's any previous year where I would have said Mizuno. But you're right. The Mercurial, the Vapor 13 Elite is the boot of 2019, in my opinion.
Yes.
There's no question about it.
Much. We're going to do that again.
I know, but we've talked about this before. I really think it's that good. And you're right. It's literally one boot that could push your brand to being the brand of the year.
Yes, and
so without it's fair. I'm not arguing with you at all.
No, it's actually, I think it's healthy that we have different opinions on this, because I could have just as easily gone with Mizuno, but I just feel, I got to keep it real. And I wanted to give it to Mizuno. I think a lot of people out there wanted me to give it to Mizuno, so we both did, and, it got the official Boot Nerds seal of approval. But, yeah, Mercurial Vapor 13. It's hard to argue. Well, right.
There you have it, folks.
There you have it. The brand of the year, Mizuno and Nike take a bow. But it's been a strong year. Anyways, with that, I think we move on to some questions. We have a little bit of time to go through some of you guys' questions from the comment section right down below. One from Louis ERK. Have you tried using leather shoe stretches in football boots? It feels weird, but I'm finally able to make my Mizunos fit my big toe. Really recommended, but it definitely stresses the boot. Good idea. I've never used it personally because I have a very slim foot. Have you, Josh?
I've never used. When I was really young, I had this one coach back when leather boots. Everyone had leather boots, and he I don't know why this advice has stuck with me, but he always recommended shoving a tennis ball into the front of the boot to stretch it. Which, looking back, is a terrible idea because you're stretching the boots totally in the wrong direction. Right. Picture the shape of a tennis ball and then picture the shape of your toes. Right. So for me, I've always been a big believer in just wearing the boots. And if they're uncomfortable or too tight for the first couple of sessions, I'm just going to bear through it, because once I get through that point, they're just going to fit me perfectly. Yeah. But I think if you had really wide feet, or if you did have maybe an oddly shaped foot for some reason, which some people do, yeah, I don't think that a shoe stretcher is a bad thing, but I think you need to be very progressive in terms of how much you stretch them, a little bit at a time. I think it'd be a bad idea to throw some shoe stretchers in and then start turning the dial all the way max and just try to stretch them as wide as possible from the very first time.
Yeah, I think if you need to use a shoe stretcher. I don't feel personally you should do it just because, but you should do it because you have an actual identifiable problem, and that a shoe stretcher would offer a solution. That's what I would say. So
yeah, with a leather boot, I think you can get away with it though, depending on the leather boot. But I've always given this advice, and I'm sure you probably agree with me. If you put on a pair of boots and they just feel so uncomfortable that you feel this need to stretch them or try to change the shape, it's probably not the right boot for you in the first place.
True. That is a very good point. And if you have a boot that you absolutely love and this is in 98% of what am I saying here? You love it so much, there's only one little niggle that it squeezes your big toe in. Otherwise, it's the perfect boot for you. Then you can go in and try to help yourself out a little bit. But, I would say it's in rare cases.
Yeah.
Ricky Hui. Hey, Jay and Josh, I've never tried leather boots before and just ordered a pair of Tiempo Legend 8 Elites. Then I listened to your old podcast. Did I make a bad decision? Yo, big up, by the way, for just thinking that if we've said the Tiempo Legend 8 is a bad decision, it's probably a bad decision. Big up, my man. Look, it's not. Just because we don't really think the Legend 8 is still a legend, it doesn't make it a bad boot. In fact, as we've said today as well, it's a great boot, and it might not be a bad venture into leather boots, because it's a leather boot that feels a little bit like a synthetic boot. So maybe you're actually you've made a very good choice.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad. You're right. If you've never worn a leather boot before and you're trying to make the transition, that is a very good compromise in terms of the features on offer and the way that it feels in general, right? Because you know what, a lot of people have asked me the same question, and I typically recommend go buy a pair of Nike Premier 2s on sale for $70 or $60 and wear them at practice. It's so inexpensive. It's you might as well try it, but that's a very extreme transition. If you were wearing Mercurials and then you went and played in a pair of Nike Premier 2s, you're going to be oh my gosh, this is potentially awful depending on what you like your boots to feel like. But I think the Legend 8 is actually a really nice compromise in terms of giving you the feel of leather, but also not feeling old school.
Yes. Very good explanation. There's this guy called Will Stewart. Hey, Will. Jay and Jimmy John. That's a brilliant name, by the way. As a boot nerd dad. Oh, we got one of those. He's filled a lot of bags full of elite tier youth boots for the kids. He's asking if we ever think Adidas are going to release like kid-sized top-tier boots, because their kid-sized boots aren't as high quality as Nike's. They basically released their Vapor 13 Superfly Elites in like down to a 4.5 UK, 4.5 US, 5 UK, something like that. Honestly, I have no idea. I think it would be a great idea to actually just, make the same top tier boots 1-to-1, just make them in smaller sizes.
Yes. Well, I think there's a few issues with this. The one thing that a lot of people don't consider is scaling, right? Because you design a boot in a men's size and you can make it bigger to a certain point, and you can make it smaller to a certain point. But in terms of making it in a kid size, you can only shrink down that shoe with those materials so much until, like, just imagine taking a Mercurial that does have a firmer kind of sole plate and you shrink it down to half the size. Now that material is just way too stiff given that size if a 45 or 50 pound kid's going to be running around in them, right? So you have to consider that. Then you have to consider pricing, right? I think there's this huge issue where if they're going to charge $275 for a men's Superfly, is the kid Superfly going to be $100? Because that's what most parents are willing to spend for their kids. Now there's this discrepancy within the brand where it's like, okay, if this is only $100 for the exact same model, why is this $275? So they have to make some changes based on that as well. It's tough because, look, if you're a parent buying shoes for your kid in that size, it's ultimately up to the parents on what they're willing to spend. And most parents they don't want to spend this crazy amount of money. So it's this, I'm sure they have some kind of algorithm that they've worked out where it's like, we could spend this much money developing this youth model, but we're probably only likely to sell this many pairs, and it's not going to be worth it for us to do it in the first place. So they just don't end up doing it, right?
That is exactly the answer he was looking for, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, the vast majority of consumers, they see the commercials, they see the Instagram ads, they watch the pros wearing it on TV, and then they go to the store and they see the takedown model and they assume it's the same thing.
Yeah, they get it.
So there's not really a lot of value for Nike to like trickle down those technologies.
And that's I think Will's problem is that he is actually boot savvy. He understands that. So yes. Will is not like most people. He's actually willing to spend the money on those boots. So I guess, Will, you're in a bit of a pickle. I think what Josh said, and I'm not going to repeat it. It was spot on. And I don't think it's likely to happen based on those considerations. So hopefully your kid grows to have adult-sized feet and don't end up like me, who just barely squeezes into the adult-sized category. I hope that's going to happen one day. But big up for being a boot nerd dad. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. A question here from Matthew Burns. I still have a pair of Adidas X17 Plus Pure Speeds and absolutely love them. Wearing them over my Copa 19 Pluses sometimes since they fit perfect around my foot. What previous generations do you guys prefer over the current models?
I'm kind of with them on that X17 Plus. I think I might pick that over an X19, any of the current Adidas Speed boots personally. I really like that one.
Okay, interesting. I was going to say Puma Future 18.1.
If had the Future 5.1 not come out, I would have been with you. Also, just because we were talking about the Tiempo not being exactly what we wanted, I would love, and this is a weird pick, I love the Tiempo Legend 5.
I know.
I don't know why. I like that one.
I basically took this question so you could say Tiempo Legend 5.
Yeah, I like that one. There's there's so many older boots that I'd be happy to wear. So yeah, there's absolutely nothing weird about that. I think it just has to be, like, if you're seeking out boots that are like, let's say 3 to 4 years old max, you're probably okay in terms of still wearing them and having the boots hold up.
And you can even go back to like 13, 14 and have some very, very good boots still.
Yeah. The only issue is when you go that old, like we talked about in the that was a completely different episode now that I'm thinking about it. But if you go too old, then you have to worry about the boots potentially breaking, right? And you're going to pay a premium for stuff that's desirable and really old anyways. Probably not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. We just have one quickie question here from RD7. Hey Jay, I just wanted to know, how did it end with that t-shirt battle between myself, Jolter, and PVG on the Unisport store website? Greetings from Italy to both of you. Just a great podcast. Thank you, my man. Well, the whole t-shirt battle didn't go very well. I think I won, but we didn't sell all of the t-shirts, and they're still on the site if you wanna, rock out with my face on your. On the front of your shirt. I did see an Instagram story the other day where we some of the young guys we visited in Ghana on the Right to Dream Academy, who I have high hopes for in the future. They're probably going to be big time ballers. He was actually he posted a picture of him wearing the J Mike t-shirt. So life goal achieved.
But I saw that. This is a complete side story here, but a lot of people don't know this. It's a fun fact about J Mike. If you ever see him in public and he has a backpack, that backpack is full of t-shirts with his face on it. So as long as you just go up to him and introduce yourself, he'll give you a t-shirt with his face on it. Oh, we just lost connection. oh, reconnecting. But that's actually true. He regularly hands out t-shirts with his face on them.
So guys, the beauty of calling overseas on FaceTime is that sometimes the connection drops out, and I think Josh needs to invest in better internet speeds. So sorry about that, but we were going to conclude the podcast anyway. So if you haven't done so already, let us know what you think is the brand of the year in the comment section right down below. That is, of course, also where you should leave your questions for the next podcast. And if you haven't done so already, remember to subscribe to the Boot Nerds podcast by clicking the black bubble in the middle of the screen. You can also check out what Josh is doing over on his channel. Maybe see what I'm up to at Unisport by clicking the green bubble somewhere over there. And finally, if you've had a good time, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button to show us a little bit of Boot Nerd love. And with that said, guys, I'm Jay, and I approve this message. Later.